head guy, chairman of the board of, chairman, CEO of NW Air Incorporated, which was our advertiser and had been for quite a while. And his name was Lou Hagopian. And one of his principal deputies was a guy named David Means. One of the principal artistic guys was a guy named Ted Regan. And then under Ted was a guy named Lou DeJoseph. And then they had a guy who was the head of our accountant. I can't even recall what that guy's name was. But they gave me a dump, and I sort of listened to all that stuff. And I said, well, look, I'd like for all of you to get your stuff together, and I'd like for you to come out to Fort Sheridan. We're going to have an all-day session on recruiting.
What had happened with them? Was it sort of a friendly briefing, or they gave you their side of the
well,
story?
It was about a day, half a day long, I guess, and it was sort of what is the agency? You know, this is NW Air, and here's who we work. Here's who we do work for. We do AT&T. We do De Beers Diamonds. We do Pepsi-Cola. We do this. We do that. And they took me through the agency, and then they took me through the kind of ads they did with various and sundry people. And they talked to me about the Army program and how much work they've done for the Army and how they did the Army program. And so it was sort of what I call the entry section of how do we manage the Army program. But it was also flavored with the fact that we are a responsible agency, and we've done considerable amount of work. In other words, you're not the only client we have, and we do some big stuff. In other words, and they have, reach out and touch someone with ATT ad is
Pretty good ad, yeah.
pretty good idea. And the diamond is forever with De Beers Diamond. That's
Their slogan.
And the Army wants to join you. Current advertising. Okay, so I took all that in, and I said, okay, next meeting will be held out in famous downtown Chicago. Bring all your buddies. So set aside a day. Go spend time going through this program, find out how we do things. So in about 30 days, I thought I had something of a handle on what the Army's recruiting command was all about, how we issued instructions to recruit people, and had some general feel about who the battalion commanders were in the field, although they were scattered all held departments, and knew the 5 region commanders, and got a good sense about that. Got a good sense about what the staff was good at and what it wasn't good at. Now, the one thing we didn't do is we didn't relieve anybody. In the staff. Didn't relieve any recruiting guys. I mean, the point was to try to take what we had and turn it into a winning team.
Did you identify provisionally any people who were really losers in your first meetings with staff and commanders, regional commanders?
No, I didn't.
Sometimes you can smell a jerk.
No, I didn't perceive anybody. It was sort of a beat down command.
Right.
And when you get a beat down group of people, they're looking for motivation, upbeat. It can be, it will be better.
Yeah.
Things will change. And I would think that, and you get this probably more from talking to people in the recruiting service at the time. I believe that they knew who I was.
pretty much behind the scenes.
Well, I visited out there once. But I think the jungle drums had taken off in the Pentagon. I was a fairly well-known guy inside the Pentagon.
No, but yeah, it sounds like you were. It sounds like you were the one people like to call.
I think that a lot of people in the recruiting command said, one, clearly Ono knew who I was, and clearly Porter knew who I was, and clearly Connolly knew who I was. Evans didn't know me, the advertising guy, but the three principal staff assistants I had, they knew who I was, and they knew that I came with clout from the headship, which is what they were looking for. They were looking for some clout and some money to get who. Ono was a terrific chief of staff. Anytime I was on the road, he would call me up every night at 6 o'clock, and he would give me a dump, and he would tell me first everything that had gone well. And if you had a problem, he'd tell me what the problem was. And he always took action. He'd say, I did this, 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 and this. He never said, what do you want me to do about that? He was a terrific chief. So running the store, then the three generals are all on the road all the time. Connolly was out trying to put out this recruiting scandal fire, and Porter was trying to exhort the troops to recruit more, and then I was trying to find out what was going on in the command. Evans looked at me as a guy who would listen to what he said about advertising, and he knew a lot about advertising.
Was he a civil servant or?
He's a civil servant, GS 14 or so.
How'd he get into, how did he know that much?
Well, he'd been in the command for 9 years as their number 2 guy in advertising.
I see.
So he knew everything there was about the agency and all that kind of stuff. And how to buy the ads, and how long it took to make them, and how to pull strings in the advertising agency, and knew what magazines we ought to be into and all that kind of stuff. So staff essentially was a good staff. Now, we didn't have any analytical capability on the staff.
So you had no way of sort of measuring what worked.
That's right. And so that's the reason I wanted a guy, and they gave me Benchoff, and Benchoff is now a major general in the Army Material Command. He's doing very well. And Dennis was a terrific guy working for me. And I went out and recruited another guy who wouldn't come until the summer. He was in the War College at the time, a guy named Bob Phillips. And Bob was an armored cavalry officer. And he came in and became my chief of recruiting operations. He's just terrific. PhD in business and behavioral science, and just a terrific guy. Make anything happen. Make it happen again. But he didn't come until the summer. And Olson didn't come to the summer. Well, reading this advertising book and understanding what had happened with the that the advertising was not well respected. I got that from this dump up in the field. The advertising slogan wasn't well respected by the people in the field, the recruiters. One of the principal attack vectors went with the agency. So when the agency came out, they had to sort of tell these stories one at a time, even though they're interrelated.
Right, right.
The agency came out for a full-blown review of the Army program. And I told all my guys I wouldn't drink a lot of coffee after about 9 o'clock at night. I surely wouldn't drink it in the morning. And I said, what we're going to do is we're going to start the meeting, and we're going to have a lot of coffee on the table, but we're not going to interrupt the meeting. We're just going and going and going and going. Energize a rabbit was it perfect.
Who all did you have there?
Well, I had the chairman of the board, and I had the chief advertising guy, I had the chief of the buying, you know, how you buy the stuff. And I had the chief of, Lutz Joseph was our chief guy on putting together the ads. Ted Regan was a media guy, I mean a creative guy. They call those guys creative guys. And Dave Means represented the head shed, Lou Gopin represented the head shed. And it was during the course of that meeting that I fired the account manager. She couldn't answer any questions.
And did you have your two generals and Colonel Ono and your
Yeah.
regional commanders there? Or
No, I didn't have a region, just a head shed.
Okay.
And
The account manager was the senior person in NW Air
responsible for the Army account.
for this account.
Specifically for the Army account.
Right. And was that all he did? Or
That's
was
all he
it-
did.
Okay.
So at the conclusion of the meeting, I said, this guy's gotta go.
And you say it's right there in front of him and everybody else?
No, I told
The chairman?
the chairman, don't want to see that guy around here. Don't like him. Ain't got any answers, doesn't know what we're doing. Spends too much time in Washington kowtowing to the secretary and not enough time working for me. So, don't need him. Get a new guy.
Did you get any argument?
Huh?
Did you get the argument from the
Well,
chairman?
no, advertising agencies work that way.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like that. It's gone. New guy comes in day after tomorrow. I mean, no time wasted. It's the way the advertising industry works. If you don't have confidence in the account manager, they get a new one, like right now.
And you knew that, did you, or did you? or
I
was
read
this-
my book.
Yeah, you read your book, okay.
So what we decided at that meeting, it went on and on and on, brought sandwiches, and these guys drinking a coffee and stand. I said, one thing you can't do is you can't smoke. There's sandwiches out there, and meeting goes on. These guys are dashing out of the room and back up, and then, what do you say while we're gone? Upshot of all that was, I took control of the advertising.
And it happened all in that meeting.
That's right. And I told Hagopia that he and I were a team. That I was the chief of the sales department. And I had two piece parts to the sales department. I had advertising, and I had the recruiting force. And that he and I were a team. I was not his adversary. He was on my team. Now that helped win over the agency to my line of work, because the agency had perceived that there had become more and more adversarial relationships between the head of the recruiting command and the agency, as opposed to a team proposition. So that became a piece of our boilerplate. Got a new account manager. Listened to all the piece parts of the puzzle, and then they presented to me what they thought was the market out there. And at this particular meeting in December, I said, we don't have enough market analysis, and therefore we want to turn on a substantial amount of market analysis, and we will pay you to do that analysis work. And I want you to do focus group work and all kinds of data dumps out of national surveys and commission a survey if that's required, and find out what kids think about the Army. And this all had to do with Cantor, Ockenbaum, and Deacon talking about you have to change the image of the Army, change the product. So we then agreed that they would go do their work. Now, meanwhile, every month I'm in New York talking to the agency, how we doing, what we're doing, all that. But we said we will meet again in, I believe, late February. Like 2 months away, get the research done, and we'll have a big meeting. We're going to New York to do it. Turns out we can't get it in New York, and we do it in Stamford, Connecticut. because you can't get in New York. It's a strike
Oh,
in
strange.
bad weather, and so the best we can do is get into Hartford, and they then drive down to Stamford, and they drive to New York up there. And Tom Evans could give you a blow-by-blow on what went on at that meeting. But that's a major meeting where we got research coughed up. We had ARI, Army Research Institute. We had West Point, in the person of a guy named Tom Fagan, who was doing research for us. We had the Rand Corporation doing research for us, and we had the agency doing research for us. And all we did was listen to research about what was going on out there in America. And I guess one of the things that I came to understand was the advertising had to appeal to the people that we were targeting, not to us guys in the service at the head shed. After all, we were already in.
Yeah, you already recruited.
So that started the train down the research, or down the track toward changing the advertising game. And I told the chief operating officer, Luke Ogian, I said, I want you to create 4 different campaigns. And he said, we produce 1 campaign. And I said, no, I want you to produce 4. I've just come from the building, I'm an analyst, I look at alternatives. So I want you to give me 4 different approaches to advertising.
These kids' minds.
And he protested, and then I said, if you don't give me 4, I'll take my money and go to a different agency. He said, in that case, we'll give you 4. And I said, I want you to get all of your creative people, and I want them all to go to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I want them to see heavy forces at Fort Knox, take a tank downrange and shoot it, and we laid all that on. And once you go to Fort Bragg and find out light forces in the Army jumping out of airplanes and all that kind of stuff. Can't jump out of airplanes, but you can see how they go do all that stuff. So I did all that. And then all this begins to come together in the February meeting.
Oh, they've done all this in 2 months?
Yeah.
Wow.
And because they had to begin to come up with these 4 pitches.
When did you tell them to do that, in December or in February?
Well, I think I told them to do that in February, after we saw the advertising layout. And those 4 pitches were, turned out to be the advantage of your age, join the Army. Join tomorrow's Army today. That was a big laser show. Night vision goggles, lasers, and all that stuff which was coming into being. Remember, this is 1980.
Right.
Be all you can be, and Army will show you how. Army will show you how was oriented on, come in, will show you a trade.
Yeah, right, post-military.
And the advantage of your age join the Army was oriented on, come into the Army and we will show you an adventure. So adventure, technology, and sort of self-motivation, and the last one was a trade. Those were the 4, and those were sort of the 4 major things that people said they joined the service for. And I think we didn't decide on what they were. We decided that we'd do the 4 in February, and then they had 3 months to put the 4 together, March, April, and May to do that, because we had to bring it into the building and make a presentation in the month of June or July.
Did you have to make a pitch? Did somebody else have to make the decision, or was your decision final on this?
No, the Army has a thing called the Advertising Council, which is made up of the Assistant Secretary of the Army Command, Fire and Reserve Affairs, the DESPER, and finally the Secretary of the Army himself has to approve it, and it's rightfully so, because it has to do with the prestige of the Army is visible then, do you follow me? So it has to be approved at the head shed of the Army.
There's no integration though of a set of advertising systems, is there? This is the only advertising campaign the Army has, wasn't it?
No, there was the National Guard, very cheap Charlie National Guard, one of the Charlie Army Reserve.
Oh, okay.
And we ultimately got those lashed together.
Yeah.
At this time, they were not, although I had the Army Reserve account, because the Army Reserve mission was part of the East Front mission. So now Tom Evans is shepherding all this. He loves it. I gets it. That's a spizzerinctum going here. in the
Yeah, something's
advertising.
happening, right?
As opposed to the advertising sort of being over there on the sidebar. We had a guy who's made some notoriety at this moment, 1994, a guy named Chris Whittle, who runs the Whittle Enterprise down in Knoxville, Tennessee. Chris currently, or in those days, in 1979, 80, and 81, he did for us a thing called a source book, which is targeted to every high school kid in the nation. It's all about Army opportunities. Now he does the Classroom One thing, you know, that brings TV into classrooms, has advertising inside the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
Does it with medics. He has he brings it into medical offices and the like. So the guy that was at Yale University who resigned and went to work for him in order to go into bringing
The former president of Yale?
yeah, for the purpose of bringing on schools which are run by Chris Whittle's organization. So the upshot of all that was a variety of, went through all this advertising stuff, and we began to get this stuff on track to come together for final presentation in the enterprise. And the agency did then bring in 4 different completely done advertising domain. First time, I believe, it may be the first time the industry's ever done that. Certainly it's the first time this company had done it, where they actually went through making TV, radio, print ad mock-ups
Support all 4
for
things.
each one of these 4 deals.
You picked 4 did you pick 4 arbitrarily, or did?
Arbitrarily, right out of my ear. So I want 4 alternatives. And they said, no, we give you the alternative. And I said, no, you give me 4 alternatives, and I'll tell you which one is the right alternative. We, the Army, will tell you which one is right. So when we got ready to present that in the summer of summer of 80, I said to Hagopian, normally the advertising agency presented the whole thing. And I said to Hagopian, no, I'm going to present half of it, and you're going to present half of it. The part I'm going to present is, I'm going to present the research about who's out there, who we should recruit, and then you're going to come along and present the way to recruit them through advertising.
But there'll be 4 ways, right?
There'll be 4 ways. And then we will recommend the solution after we look at these 4 ads. And I had not previously made up my mind on it. I didn't know, because I didn't know how it was going to be I didn't know what these 4 things would turn out to be. You follow me? I just said, give me 4.
Yeah.
So at the going in position, we didn't have be all you can be. These fall out of the research that we're done. So in the lead up for all this, pretty soon we were knuckled down to where we got these 4 campaigns, and we began to put titles on these 4 campaigns. And I'm doing my part by putting together the pitch for the target audiences. Here's the recruiting data, and here's the research that's been done. Rand Corporation, national data, advertising agency data, our own data, and the like. And who it is we ought to go after, and they're putting together the 4 storylines, and we merged the data, and I have a big meeting in in New York, and I do my rehearsal. They do the 4 campaigns. They unroll the 4 theme lines, and it's obvious which one is the right one.
It comes right there.
Or it's self-evident.
Was the research contradictory, or did you get a fairly coherent picture of
No,
what the target was?
there's a very coherent picture of what the research said we ought to do. The research said that people joined the Army for a variety of reasons. One is to escape school, 2 is to escape what they've been doing or their environment, 3 is to learn a trade, 4 is to take time out between school before going to college. Another one is to earn money to go to college. Another is to go on high adventure, and these are all rank ordered. We did surveys not only in the civilian domain, but we actually surveyed young people in the Army and first term re-enlistees. You know, got a good cross section of all. I got a lot of work done. But I said to Lou, I said, geez, you got to have a song. This is on a Thursday when we rented the final rehearsal. The showtime was going to be Monday in Washington. So you got to have a song. He said, okay. So I left New York, and I didn't know what the song was going to be, just to get a song. So they commissioned a guy named Jake Holmes, Holmes, who is a jingle writer. And he wrote Be All You Can Be, and then he sang it, put it to an orchestra on Friday. And Saturday and Sunday, they put the Be All You Can Be ad against a photo montage of faces of military people, upbeat faces of military people, male and female, all the races, and all kinds of skill domains, aviators, mechanics, and rangers, and paratroopers, and armor guys, and all that stuff. And by virtue of having gone to Bragg and gone to Fort Knox, they'd come up with some rough outlines of ads, like the tank ad, and we do more for before 9:30 in the morning. And, they had the rough outlines of those things. And Monday morning, I go in, get ready to give the pitch, and going to give it at about 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm in there about 7, and Lou says, you want to hear the song? And I said, yeah, I want to hear the song. Of course I want to hear the song. So lights go out, montage go up to play Be All You Can Be, and when the lights come on, tears run down my cheeks. And I said, done. I mean, this is it, man. I mean, gotta go, this is it. So then during that particular day, that morning at 10 o'clock, we start the review, and all the principals are in there, and I get up and I give the opening, and I give all this research data, and I said, now I'd like to introduce Mr. Lou Lugopian, who's going to give you the 4 alternative ways in which we can tackle this market. Then I went and sat down at the table. And the first one comes up, and they come up in the order which I gave them, which is the advantage of your age joining the Army. You know, he goes through this. While the research shows this, and here's the way it's going to die, show you the ads and print matter, and here's the listen to this being read over the audio like it's going to come out over the radio, and so on. And then join tomorrow's Army, got lasers going through the night, you know, and tanks and shooting lasers, people shooting lasers, and all this kind of stuff, and night vision goggles and all that kind of stuff. And Be All, you know, I haven't played Sarmer, and said, now Be All You Can Be, and went through that. Begin to get pieces of paper thrown across to me from these pachyderms sitting around the table. Open it up, see, Be All You Can Be. be all you can, be all you can, be all you can do. And we said the last one is Army will show you how, which is a trade thing. And then he says, and here's how we would cap it off. We'd already decided what the thing was going to be all you can. He said, and this is how we cap it off. And here's sort of the background music that will go on. Lights go down, all these pictures go in, they fade, they're fading in and out with various and sundry pictures up here. They're playing Be All You Can Be. Lights come on, everybody's clapping everybody on the back. God, it's great stuff, you know, and cheering and hollering. And the Assistant Secretary of the Army, Manpower Nelson, gets up, rushes upstairs. He says, start over with that montage when I bring the Secretary. He rushes upstairs, gets the Secretary, bring him down there, and Alexander comes in. Room darkens, get it all off the screen. Everybody's sort of exuberant, you know, and the montages come up and the music goes on and the lights come back on again. You know, it's great, so we got this all organized and we're ready to go. So it took us 6 months from that day to get the first 4 ads done. First 4 ads were a tank ad, M1 tank, brand new. Had to get clearance from the security people to get that ad done. Because I said, I want you to take them inside of a tank. The tank on the outside looks like any other tank. We want to get inside the tank. Show them a solid state computer, a laser rangefinder, a turbine jet engine in the rear, an old Spec 4, I think I got a kid's name, I thought I'd never forget it, but I just lapsed it. Then we had one on the airborne, and we had one on a air traffic controller bringing in aircraft in a driving rainstorm in Fort Lewis, Washington. And we had a helicopter ad going down through a bunch of trees and all that kind of stuff. Kevin Crowley, specialist 4th class Kevin Crowley, in the tank ad. So we got those ads put together, and it took us 6 months to do it, and we broke those ads on the week after Christmas during the bowl games and the pro playoff games. And then we were on the Super Bowl. We had a 1-minute ad on the Super Bowl. It cost $325,000. Now it costs you $1 million for a minute.
A minute on the Super Bowl.
Huh?
A minute on the Super Bowl is $1 million now.
Yeah, now, but then it was about 300,000. Told the advertising agency one other thing. After I went up there and looked at one of the ads they were trying to shoot, it showed me this wimp ad. It had this wimpy looking guy in it. And I said, is that guy in the Army? He said, no, that guy's not in the Army. He's an actor. And I said, no more. No more actors. We'll always use Army people in the ads. Oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. I said, yeah, you will. You do what I tell you, damn it. You will use Army people in the ads. And I said, we're not hiring any wimp actors here. Later on, they go back to doing that, but not while I was around. And I said, the Army is big and strong. It doesn't wear glasses. Hasn't got a thin, scrawny neck. It's big, brawny, big, thick necks, no glasses, broad shoulders, size 44 coats and better. And it has mass, so there's not one tank, there are lots of tanks. And there's not one helicopter, there's lots of helicopters. So we influenced the ads pretty directly. They could not get away with an ad without me going through it from start to finish, every step of the way in doing all that. So that's sort of how the advertising campaign broke. The final thing on that is I had the Army band take the song and score it 3 different ways. for a 17-piece orchestra, a 47-piece band, and a 100-piece band, and shipped it to every college and high school in America, 3 different editions. And I asked the guys who did the media buying, how many times did a kid have to listen to a song in a 30-day period in order to be able to sing the song? And the answer was 18. And I said, well, hit them 30 times in the first month. Because I want the ad campaign to be the biggest breaker ever. I want all the kids in America to be able to sing the song in 30 days. So they did. Just a sidebar about that, so we really, see, this means this ad campaign didn't get done for a year, the first year I was there.
First year, yeah.
So on the 18th of February, we're in our 7th week. And I'm invited to go out to Rockford, Illinois, and a friend of mine out there, Reverend Bobby Yantz, he and I had gone to high school together, and he was a Methodist minister. And we celebrated our birthday on the same day, and I called him up. He called me up and said, why don't you come out here and we'll have celebrate our birthday together. We haven't seen each other in 20 years. So I said, okay, it was our 50th birthday, 1981. I went in his household, and there were 2 boys there, one 13, one 11 or 12, and the other 17. And the youngster says to me, sitting beside me, he said, you're the be-all-you-can-be man? This thing only been broken now, 7 weeks. I said, yeah, I'm the be-all-you-can-be man. And he said, those are really good ads you got on top there. It's in a minister's one. And I said, which ad do you like the best? He said, I like the one about the helicopters coming through the woods. I said, what do you like about that best? He said, what I like about that best is at the end where the older man puts his arm around the younger man and says, not a bad job for a rookie. I said, well, why does that mean something to you? He said, well, it means that the Army cares about people. 11-year-old talking. And I said, well, exactly right, we do care about people. People are the Army, that's us. I said, what is the other message in that ad? He said, well, it's, he thought for a moment, he said, well, it's something about going from high school to flight school. I said, what does that mean to you? So I don't really know that exactly right, but he said, maybe if you got to go in the Navy or the Air Force, you got to be a college man. I don't know. I said, well, that's exactly right. Turned to his 50-year-old father and I said, do you know what we're talking about? He said, I've got the foggiest idea. And I said, well, you see, we're not interested in recruiting you, we're interested in recruiting him. And that's a true story, no embellishment about that. So that told me that the message was getting into the homes of America in a way in which no Army message had ever gotten there.
It's almost as if it was in code, it's right by the parents and into the ears of the targets.
Yeah. Now the other thing I said to the agency is you have to target, in every one of your ads, you have to target 3 different groups. You have to target the youngster we're trying to recruit. Then you have to target the influencer group, which is his parents or his college or his high school guidance counselor or high school teachers and the like. And the third group you have to target is you have to target the Army. You have to aggrandize the Army.
Internal.
And so this thing of having the older guy put on his arm around, see, that aggrandizes the Army. Because that's the old warrant officer putting his arm around the young warrant officer saying, you know, good job for a rookie. Or that's sergeant putting his arm around some kid and saying, you did a good job here, Schmerling. Now, the NWA was very good at that. Because if you look at the De Beers Diamond ads, for example, the conclusion of the De Beers Diamond ads is a very tender moment between a husband and a wife, or between a suitor and a potential fiance or whatever. It's just the tender moment when there's recognition that the spouse or the suitor is giving somebody a very precious object, a diamond, in some form or another. If you also look at reach out and touch someone,
It's a gentle
there's
feeling kind of thing.
one of the most touching ones in there is the one of the black lady that's talking to her son who's away in the Army or the Navy or whatever it is, and he's calling her up and reporting something good he's done, and she breaks out in tears and reach out and touch someone. I mean, and you really do that when you pick up the phone and call somebody like that. So they were good at that, and so they understood the guidance about having to aggrandize serving military people. So that was sort of the advertising gambit. Now you had to have money to put that stuff into the print and into the media and into all that. And when I went back to Vesey in one of my monthly kind of meetings, I said, I'm going to have more advertising money to put this campaign in a major leap-off to get us going here, so we can really smack the American people with this particular ad and this advertising stance that tells them you come to work with us. See, we ended up with a normative ad on normative behavior. You know, you could come and join the Army, and you could be all that you can be given your God-given talents, as opposed to it's a job or it's an adventure or it's a stop-out position for you're stopping out from school before going on to another school. So I think the ad turns out to be what we really believe about the Army. And that is, if you go to work in the Army, at least it's what I believe about the Army. I believe you go to work in the Army, you can do most any damn thing you want to in the Army, given whatever creative abilities you have. And if you don't, you have to look at the Army as saying, well, maybe you don't have any creative ability, as opposed to saying, you know, nobody listens to what I say, and nobody lets me do anything. I mean, squad leader is a squad leader, and a private soldier is a private soldier, and if he wants to be a very good mortarman or an artilleryman or whatever it is he wants to squad, you know, in the infantry or whatever he wants to be, he can be that. So I think that it took on in the Army. It got internalized by the Army. General Fred Mahaffey was a friend of mine and left the Department of the Army and went to command the 3rd Infantry Division in Germany. And he made "Be All You Can Be" sort of a slogan for the Marine Division, and there were signs all over the place, you know, "Be all you can be" and all this. So a lot of places around the Army, it got internalized as a perfectly okay thing. We took all the message traffic in the Army, for example, and at the top and the bottom of the message traffic put "Be All You Can Be." I mean, and so little clerks looking around things and sergeants looking around things, you know, pretty soon they get fired up and they say, geez, I guess these guys really mean you can be all you can be.
You know, this is important because if you sell something to the public and then they get into the Army and find out that that's not what's there, then you give it a 12-month cycle and your ad campaign is cut off at the knees.
Yeah.
It's not
The worst thing that can happen to you in an ad campaign is the famous downtown poison the well back in Main Street, USA. That is the worst thing that can happen to you. Which gets at a whole nother line of reasoning that has to do with cleaning up the avarice in the recruiting service. We simply had to change the recruiting stance of the recruiters. We had to change our workforce. So I went to the Department of the Army in another one of these monthly meetings, and I said, I want to change the workforce. And they said, yeah, like what? I said, well, right now, people volunteer to be recruiters. And they may be volunteering for the wrong reason.
Yeah, they volunteered for it, and then it became a career field, and
Yeah.
you didn't have to go back to infantry period. You
You bet.
spent 25 years.
That's right. So I said, I don't want that in my recruiting force. I want the recruiting force to be just like the drill sergeant force. If you're good enough, you can get selected to be a recruiter. And then you will return to the force and you will have to serve with those
Guys you recruited.
the guys you recruited. And so there will be custodial responsibility and ownership from the time you recruit a guy until you serve with a guy back in the force. Now, because Vesey was the vice, he said, do it, as the end of that. And I kept that going for as long as I stayed on active duty. And incidentally, it's back like it was before now.
Is it really?
Yeah.
You kept it then until 91.
No, I left, well, I mean, essentially left the Army in '87 when I left as the vice, and I went down to Tradoc, and I didn't have any influence over it there much
It started
down there. So I kept it going for 1980 to '87, okay? And then the termites got in the way, and they persuaded various and sundry people to go back to old methods, and that's finally been submitted last year. They finally got it done in 1992. They turned it back to, it's a full-time, volunteer in, serve your life there and all